Well, I'm not sure. Do I say good afternoon or good evening? Either way, we're right at the borderline between the two. There we go. You remember the beginning. It started so well. And God gave people a choice. They could trust Him, or they could not. And it was so good. Adam and Eve, free in the garden, having a good, close relationship with God. No difficulties. But there was an enemy. There was one who was planning to ruin the relationship between God and man because he wanted to hurt God. And so he tempted Eve, and she ate of the fruit that God had commanded them not to eat from. And when she did that, sin came into the world. But God already had a plan. He said at the very beginning, just as at the same time as he was punishing them, he also gave them a promise that there would be one, their descendants, that would come and defeat Satan. You remember, people continued to veer off the path. They kept going further and further astray until at one point during the time of Noah, God said, there is nothing good in them. It's all evil all the time. So he sent a flood. Already at that time, over 1,500 years had passed, so there were a lot of people because they were living long time. So there were a lot of people. God chose one, the one that he saw that had put his trust in him, Noah. And he told him the way to be saved from it, from the flood that he was going to send. So Noah obeyed God. He trusted him and obeyed God, and he built the ark. And through the ark, they were saved from the flood. But everyone else on the outside died, including the creatures. Only that which had entered the ark, the one way of salvation from the flood, they were saved. The trouble is, though, after the flood, God said, I am never going to send a flood on the earth again, even though, and this is the hard thing, even though every inclination of their heart is evil all the time, they had not changed, even after the flood. And that proved true, because as the years passed, people increased on the earth, and they forgot God. And they became puffed up, proud. And so God had to ruin their plans there at Babel. Now we have a problem with lots of languages. I forget how many languages there are in Nigeria. In the Philippines, there are like 150. In Indonesia, over 850 languages. Just, what a mess. What a mess it became. So then people, even after that time, people continued to veer off the path. And they were worshiping now many, many different gods, thousands of gods. They'd forgotten about the true God. And so God revealed himself to Abraham. And he said that I'm going to bless you and increase the number of your descendants on the earth. Look up the stars. If you can count them, that's how many. An innumerable amount of descendants that he would have. But what was the problem? What was the problem with that? Abram was married to Sarah, and Sarah was not having any children. And they were already getting old. He was 75 and she was 65. And Abraham believed. Despite this, Abraham believed, and God counted it to him as righteousness. God accepted him on the basis of his belief. It's the same way that he is now. God saw that Noah believed him, and so he was saved. God always saves those who put their trust in him. He believed, but that didn't mean that he got the answer to the promise right away. He had to wait a long time, 25 years. So you remember what happened later. 13 years, about 12 years into this, Abraham is now 87 and Sarah 77. And Sarah got impatient. And she said, we've got to make this work somehow. So she took her servant and gave her to her husband so that she could have a child through that servant. That servant's name was Hagar. And it worked. Hagar became pregnant, and she gave birth to a child. His name was Ishmael. Now, yes, it seemed like it was working, but actually that was not the plan of God. God had said, through your wife, Sarah, you're going to have a child. And through that child and his offspring, I'm going to bless all the people on the earth. Now, so they waited. And this child, Ishmael, was growing up, but God said, Abraham is now 99 years old, and Sarah is, what is she? 89 years old, 10 years apart. And God says, your wife, Sarah, is going to have a child, and I'm going to bless the whole world through that child. And Abraham laughed. Yeah. Later, when God had appeared again, you remember, Sarah is standing in the tent as God is appearing and talking with Abraham. And God repeats that promise. He says, Sarah, your wife, 1 year from now, she's going to have a child. And you're to name that child Isaac, which means laughter. And she laughed. I don't know, she probably didn't laugh very hard, and she probably didn't think anyone heard. But God said, why did Sarah laugh? I didn't laugh. Now she's probably both embarrassed and afraid. I didn't laugh. Yes, you did, but it's going to happen. So, we will pass on the story about Lot in Sodom and what happened there as a result of sin. But during that year, that's what happened exactly as God said. Abraham did have a son through Sarah. Sarah was now 90 and Abraham 100 years old. And she named him Laughter because she said, everyone who hears about this is going to laugh. Who could believe it? 90 years old. And funny thing is, she said, I have borne him a son in his old age. She's 90 years old. Anyway, so yes, they did laugh, and they named him Laughter. And it was a good reminder when God makes you a promise, laughter is not the right response. And he did bring a lot of laughter, I'm sure, into their lives and joy. But we know what happened there after that. They named him Laughter, Isaac. Isaac's growing up. And then one day, God tests Abraham. Abraham knew, 25 years I waited for this child. Impossible that a 100-year-old man and his wife was 90 is going to have a child. But I had the child anyway. God can be trusted. He had learned this over those 20 years. God said, take your son and sacrifice him. So he did. He went straight up there and did just as God had said. And why? Why was he able to do that? Well, like last time I was saying, I'm sure I would have failed that test. I would have thought, I'm crazy. I must be hearing voices. This can't be true. God would never do that. And how is that going to happen? He said that through this child, he's going to bless all the nations on the earth, and I'm going to have lots of offspring through this child. If I kill him, how am I going to have any more offspring? Through this child, he said. The reason he could do it is he reasoned that God, even if he killed his son, God could raise him from the dead. That's where his faith had gone. And because he believed God, then God gave him an out. And God said, reckoned it to him as righteousness. That is, he accepted him. He was made acceptable by God because he trusted him. So, as he was about to kill his son, God appeared to him and said, don't kill your son. And so he looked around behind him, and there, lo and behold, how on earth did that get there? A ram stuck in a bush, its horn stuck there. Now, this is probably a fairly common sight here in the Faroe Islands, rams, probably not normally stuck in bushes, but anyway, it was stuck in a bush right there, not harmed, perfect and ready. Just as he had said before he went on up the mountain, as he was going up the mountain with his son, God will provide. And God did provide. He provided the ram. And so Abraham, he took the ram and he sacrificed that on the altar instead of his son. A very good picture of the coming days, what God's plan would be. A substitutionary sacrifice. So, that's what he did. And God was pleased. Now, we go a little bit further. Esau is now probably around 20 years old. If he was carrying a stack of wood for the fire, he wouldn't have been a small child. He's probably around 20 years old, and the years are passing. Abraham is getting older. And so his father, I don't know if that was fairly common. Probably it was common at that time. He decided he was going to do some matchmaking, shall we say. In the Philippines, they do a lot of matchmaking. In fact, when I was a single and I got to the Philippines, some of the older ladies were saying, oh, how about that person? How about that person? Matchmaking. And so his father did a little bit of matchmaking for him. And it so happened as this was around the same time as his mother had died. His father, Isaac's father, Abraham, he reached the ripe old age of 175. And did you know what? After Sarah died, when she was 130, which means he would have been 140, he remarried. Wow. He remarried, and he had 5 children through that woman, Keturah. That's a side story. Anyway, so Sarah died at a age of 130, which means that Isaac would have been 40 years old. So his father arranges for a marriage, and he sends his servant out, and the servant finds this young woman, Rebecca, same name as my daughter, and also beautiful. And so they get married, and he's comforted after losing his mother. And very happy. Well, time's passing. They've been married for I forget how many years, and he had been 40 when they got married. 20 years later, they still don't have any children. And God had repeated his promise to Isaac. He says, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to make your descendants increase on the earth. And I'm going to give to your descendants the land that you're walking around in now. So the problem is, he's waited 20 years, and his wife is not having a child. She's probably we might guess, around 35, 40 years old. She's not had a child. So he calls to God, and he says, God, can you help her out here? Can you help us out? And God does. He helps them out, and she gets pregnant. And it's quite an interesting pregnancy, because those babies are really doing the somersaults in her belly. And she says, what's going on in here? And so she asks God, what's going on here? And God says, well, this is it. You have twins. You have twins, and the younger one is going to end up being greater than the older one. And lo and behold, when she gave birth, they were twins. They were very unlike. Even though they were twins, they were very unlike each other. One was red-colored and hairy, and the other one was not. We don't know what the color of the other one was. The Hebrew word for red-colored or red is Edom. So he was named Esau, which means hairy, and he was also named Red or Edom. But there are other reasons for that name we'll come to later. So also an interesting birth story, because as they were coming out, one is starting to come out first, and then the other one ends up coming out, and the one that comes out second, the younger brother, he's holding on to the ankle of the older one as they come out. And there is a saying, or a way that and a euphemism, I guess you might say, an idiom for being a cheater, or I was going to say a word, but I found out that in the German, it's a German word, and it doesn't have a good meaning. Basically, he was one who fools other people. And so that ended up being the case. The younger one's name is Jacob, which means ankle holder, grabbing hold of the ankle. Jacob. And so they grew up. Now the red hairy one, he was a very manly man as he grew up. He loved to go out hunting. He liked to hunt with the bow and the arrow, and he was very successful at it. And his father rather liked that, probably the manliness of him, and also the fact that he liked the game that Esau would catch. He liked the taste of it. But Jacob was rather different. He stayed among the tents, probably helped his mother. So Esau was the favorite of the father, and Jacob was the favorite of the mother. Well, according to their custom, the older brother, he was the one who would inherit the greater blessing, or the birthright. He would have whatever the higher percent of the inheritance, and also whatever inherit also the blessings of the father. So he would have naturally gotten these blessings that God had handed down to Isaac, would have naturally followed on to him. Well, they were growing up later, and Esau one time he went out hunting, and he was not successful. And he came back to the tents, and his brother was waiting for him there, kind of waylaid him. And with a very nice smelling pot of soup, lentil soup, red lentil soup. And his brother is famished. He's been hunting all day and he's got nothing. And he said, well, maybe read it. Oh, no, I'll pass on to the next part. So anyway, so he gets there and he says, give me some of that soup. He says, first, yeah, sure, you can have some. First, tell me your birthright. What's a birthright going to do any good? What good is a birthright going to do me? I'm about to starve here. Give me some of that soup. Yeah, there you got it. And so I said, swear it to me first. So he did. And Esau ate and he left. And he didn't think anything more about it. He had just sold his inheritance and the promises that God had passed on from Abraham to Isaac and now would have been to him. But he didn't think anything of it. He didn't care about it. Well, time passed and Isaac is now getting old. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, make sure I'm not running away with the time, that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son. Here I am, he answered. Isaac said, I am now old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. You know, they say about men, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I think that's probably what Esau had done. Now, Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so that I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Well, I'm not going to read the whole portion here. Going to speed it up a little bit. So he's kind of worried about this because there are some differences between him and his brother. His brother is hairy. His brother is red. Well, the red part is not going to be an issue because his father is now blind, but hairy, and he smells different. Apparently, when you go blind, your other senses kind of take up some of the slack. Your senses become a little more sensitive. So what she did is, he did that. He took the goats and she prepared it just like he liked, and she skinned the goats. And she took the skin and put it on his arms and on the back of his neck. Why? So that when the father feels him, he would feel hairy, right? And then she took the clothing of the brother that smelled like Esau and put them on him. So he went in there. Father, I'm here. Come eat so that you can bless me. And the father said, who are you, my son? I'm your son Esau, your oldest. He said, come here so I can bless you. So he comes here, and he feels his arms. Yeah, that's hairy, but you sound strange. You sound just like Jacob. Who are you really? I'm your son, Esau. Okay, so he ate and he drank and he's feeling pretty cheerful. And he says, come closer to me so that I can kiss you. A way of greeting there. And he comes close to him and he smells him, and he smells just like Esau. And so he gives him the blessing. You're going to be you're going to rule over your brother, and you're going to get this and that, and God will bless you with good harvests and all these kinds of blessings that he gave to him. And then, just as he's leaving, his older brother comes in. And his older brother had been successful. He got something, and he had prepared it. Too late. He went into his father, and he said, "Father, here I am. Eat, and so that you can bless me." "Who are you?" "I'm your son Esau." "Ah, he tricked me. Just like his name suggests, he's a tricker. He tricked me." But something must have happened, because Esau tried to get the blessing, and it was too late. First of all, he didn't care about the blessing before. Why is he caring about it now? He didn't care about the blessing. He'd sold it for a pot of soup. Too late. It was too late. Isaac knew somehow that that blessing was appropriate for that son. Well, Esau is very angry. He says, "You just wait. My dad's going to die soon, and when he dies, I'm going to kill my brother." So the mother heard this, and she made it happen. I think I will wait for this one to the next time, because it's getting a bit long here. But so she arranges it, because Esau had already gotten married. He had 2 wives, and these 2 wives were a pain in the neck. You've heard about the problems in in-laws, between in-laws. They had major problems as in-laws. These Canaanite women that Esau had married were, she says, "I'm tired of living because of these women." So she said to Isaac, he said, "Please, I'm tired. Don't let him get married to some local women here, because we don't want that to happen again. So send him off to our relatives in Padan Aram." And so Isaac agreed, and he was sent. Now, we'll learn next time about what happened there in Padan Aram as he goes off on the way there, and then what happens there. This is the story, how it's going to happen. I don't know if I had told you about this before, but when God was making promises to Abraham, when he was still alive, he had made him one promise concerning his offspring, the ones that would come. He said, "Your descendants are going to become strangers in a different land, and they're going to be in that land for 400 years, and they will be mistreated, and then I will save them from that place." Now, this is leading in that direction, how this is going to happen. So we kind of need this, how the descendants came along. But what can we learn from this? What can we learn from this session? Well, first of all, that God is faithful. He always does what he says. We can wait for long periods of time and start to wonder, is it really true? But God always fulfills his promises. Always fulfills his promises. Abraham waited for 25 years, and it happened. And Isaac also had children. He had to wait for 20 years. And another thing that we can learn is that we don't need to help God along in his plans. This is what, you remember Rebecca had been promised concerning the sons, that the younger son would end up being the greater son. The older would serve the younger. Now, her favorite son was the younger son, probably partly due to this fact. And when the father was going to give him the inheritance and the blessings, she took it into her own hands to make it happen, that the older would serve the younger. And Jacob did the same. He took it into his own hands, first of all, by fooling his brother with a pot of soup, and then later tricking his father. But what goes around comes around, we say in English. And this tricking thing was going to turn around and bite him in the back. We're going to learn this later. God doesn't need help. When God said, your wife is going to have a son, and then they waited 13 years or 12 years, and it wasn't happening, they made their own way. That ended up becoming a problem. It became a problem in their relationships, and later on, in their descendants, it became a problem. Because Ishmael's descendants ended up becoming a problem. To this day, they are a problem. The Arabs and the descendants of Isaac. So, and then this with Jacob. This ended up becoming a problem. Now he ended up having to run away from home because of what he had done. God doesn't need our help. He will always do what he says. That's all.